Hello. Okay, I just wanted to make a quick video showing you my solutions to the Magpie lab so that you can see if you did it right, if there's something you missed. But just doing it got you credit, so nice job with that. Anyway, here's how I did it. So this was the original activity. I'm going to skip past this part about going online to look at how chat box work. Look at activity 2. So we had to set up a Magpie class, and then we wanted to figure out how it responded to these 4 statements. So if you had Eclipse, you could have typed in the Magpie runner, plus press play there, and it says, hello, let's talk, and now I can type in what I want. And it wants me to say these 4 things. So the first one was, my mother and I talked last night. Tell me more about your family. Okay, and then the next thing was, I said no. Oops, sorry. Why so negative? So here it's kind of talking, it's responding appropriately. I'm talking about a family member. It says, tell me about your family. I'm saying the word no, and it's saying that I'm negative. The weather is nice. It's nice outside today. Okay, so it kind of, again, responded correctly. And the last one was, do you know my brother? And it says, why so negative again? So you might have suggested to say something about family, but for some reason it says, why so negative? So let's take a look real quick. In the Magpie Java, it's all about this get response method that I think a lot of you figured out. When I said mother, there was something right here, statement.index of mother. If that's greater than or equal to 0, it said tell me more about your family. So it looked for these words. If you notice, brother's in here also, so a little weird that it doesn't say tell me more about your family. We'll look at why in a second. The weather is nice. Let's see, I added some stuff in here, but the weather is nice. Right here, weather. It is nice outside today. That's why I said that. When I said no, it said why so negative? Right here. Why so negative? So did you figure out why when you said do you know my brother, it also said why so negative? It's because of the order the if statements were in. So if you noticed, even though the word no isn't in there, no is. So as soon as it finds no anywhere in that statement, it's going to say why so negative. It never got to the one that checked for brother. So that's why it said that. So the order that you put things in is kind of important. Okay. Then it said alter the code, have it respond to tell me more about your pets when the statement contains a word dog or cat. So I just added an else if, looking for where dog is and where cat is. And the way it says greater than or equal to 0, so it's basically saying, okay, find where the word dog is in your statement. If it's greater than or equal to 0, that means somewhere in this spot, the word dog, or somewhere in the statement that you made, the word dog is going to be there. And you can see here, if I say I like, or I have a dog, it says tell me more about your pets because it found dog in there. Now, the reason it says greater than or equal to 0, let me kind of talk about this statement real quick. So the statement I wrote was I have a dog. So picture this for a second. The statement is I have a dog. Okay, now a string, which is what statement is kind of like an array in that each spot has an index. I is at index 0, the space is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so when the computer does statement that index of dog, when it says why that's if that's greater than or equal to 0, what this part returns is it looks at the statement and finds where the word dog starts. And it's right here. So technically this is returning 9, which is bigger than or equal to 0. But if it returned any number bigger than or equal to 0, it would mean it's in that statement. If it wasn't in that statement, like let's say this was, I have a fish, then dog isn't in there at all, and this would return -1. -1 is not greater than or equal to 0, so it would mean that it's not in the statement. Okay, so that's why it had all these greater than or equal to 0 parts. Okay, let's keep going. Have it respond favorably when it sees the name of your teacher. Okay, so that was just another else if. I did lowercase Laylee or capital Laylee, and I do sound like a great teacher. Okay. This one might have given you a little bit of trouble. Have the code check when the statement was at least one character. So what happens when I just hit enter and say nothing is it says say something please. Now, there's different ways to do it, and some of you came up with good ways. I liked your problem solving. The fastest way is not to use index of and just say statement.length. So if the length of the statement is 0, that means there was nothing in the statement. So that's why I have this else if right there. And again, there are ways to use index of. You can't do statements. Some of you might have tried this. Dot index of blank, because that's always going to give you, that's always going to equal 0, because nothing kind of, or like it is in there. So yeah, it's not going to work. Add 2 more non-committal responses to the random response method. So you might have seen originally, I'm going to go back to the original code for a second. In the random response method, the number of responses was 4, and then there were some else ifs to come up with random responses. So at that stage, you were supposed to add 2 more else ifs. Which response equals 4, which response equals 5. But it's important that you change this number when you do that, because this is used in calculating this variable called which response. So which response takes r, which is math.random, and multiplies it by number of responses. So initially it's 4. Remember math.random, when you see that, this gives you a number from 0 less than or equal to x less than 1. So it does include 0, doesn't include 1. So you get some big long decimal between 0 and 1. So that second line where I cast it as an int, and I do r times number of responses. So if I do r times number of responses, I'm going to abbreviate a little bit. Okay, that if number of responses is equal to 4, like it is initially, multiplies these two values by 4, and now this is 0 less than or equal to x less than 4. Casting it as an int means it can only be 0, 1, 2, or 3. Notice not 4 because it's not equal to. So if I get a number 0, 1, 2, or 3, then if which response ends up being 0, it tells me that random response. If it's 1, it says 2, it says that, 3, it says that. So if I added an else if, which response equals 4, and then said response equals O, or some kind of random thing like that, it's never going to pick this response unless I change this to 5. Because as it's written with 4, I can only get 1, 2, or 3. If I change it to 5, then it multiplies everything by 5, and now I can get that choice 4. So hopefully when you updated your random responses, you also changed the number of responses. Okay. We talked about this. What happens when more than one keyword appears in a string? It does whatever the first one is in your list of else ifs. That's why that no said why is so negative instead of the tell me more about your family for brother. Okay, now this part was also tricky. The I like thing. If I said I want to build a robot or I want to understand French, we want to alter the code to have it respond to I want something by saying why do you want that something? Same with I like. Why do you like that something? Now some of you might have dealt with the punctuation. If you didn't, that's fine. I'll show you how I do it. But I said make use of the substring and index of methods. So let me show you that. Here's I want and I like. It starts the same way as always. So we make sure I want or I like is actually in there somewhere. And I have this variable called spot, which finds exactly where I want is. So it says, why do you want? Statement.substring spot plus 7, and then statement.length minus 1. And then I put a question mark on the end. And when I type something in like I want a cookie, it says, why do you want a cookie? It responds directly, grabbing that word, or those words, a cookie. And here's how it works. So if I take this whole thing right here, let's see, is this going to work if I copy and paste it? Perfect. Okay, let's talk about this for a second. So let's say your statement was the one I just showed. I want a cookie. Okay, so it finds I want. So what does that return? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. So I want starts at space 0. So that is greater than or equal to 0, so that works. So what would spot equal? Well, I want is at space 0. Then it says, why do you want statement.substring spot plus 7? So this would be 7, comma, statement.length minus 1. All right, well, let's finish this off here. This would be 11, 12, 13, 14, and the period would be 15. So what would statement.length be? It should be 16, because there's 16 characters here. So statement.length minus 1 is 15. And remember how the substring method works. 7 is the first value you want. So that's right here. And 15 is the first one you don't want. So what I'm just doing by that is I'm chopping off the period so that I can add a question mark at the end instead. So this whole spot here is a cookie. Now why did I put plus 7? Well, that's because I figured out how many letters I want was. If I want starts at space 0, this is 1, there's 1 letter for I, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So to get to a cookie, I have to go 7 indices after I want. It's basically because I want contains 7 characters, 5 letters, and 2 spaces. That's why that says plus 7. Make sense? Of course it does. Okay. I like, same idea. I did the exact same thing. Okay. Lastly, using an array. It said create an array of strings in the getRandomResponse method and fill it with the existing random responses. Delete the if-else statements. Have the method return the response found at a randomly generated position in the array. Test your code. Okay, so what I did with that, now again, originally the getRandomResponse was a bunch of else ifs, which is fine, but here's what it looks like as an array. So first I made an array of strings, and I initialized it to all of my random responses. And remember, one way to make an array is to call it and initialize it immediately to everything that you want it to be. So the first space, space 0, would be interesting, tell me more. Space 1 would be Space 2 would be do you really think so? And I keep going. And I added some of my own responses also. Now that number of responses, now originally I told you to keep updating it. Like I changed it to 5 when I added my O response over here. And I could just make it however many responses I have, but if you notice, one way to make it so you don't have to always change it now is just set it equal to responses.length. Responses.length is how many values are stored in the responses array. So if I add one now, like if I added, haha, I wouldn't have to update this line because it would be automatically updated because now statement.length would be, or responses.length would be 1 bigger. I get my random number again, which response, and instead of returning what I did previously, which was one random response, I'm still doing that, but I'm accessing the responses array at whatever space which response gives me. Because again, how many are in here? What's the length? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 9 of them now. So responses.length is 9. If I do math.random times 9, that's going to give me a number from 0 to 8. So 0 to 8 is going to respond to one of the 9 indices in here. So we'll access it right away and return it. All right, so that was the Magpie lab. Hopefully that cleared up any confusions you had. If you still have any questions, feel free to send me an email and await your next assignment. Good luck.